All right, joining us live now from Washington is Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes. He is on the House Intelligence Committee. Representative Himes, we appreciate you joining us. And let me ask you just first, House Democrats drafted 2 articles of impeachment today. Tell us your thinking about what happened this morning.
Yeah, not a surprise. Obviously, once we got the evidence about what the president had done in calling for the Ukraine president to start an investigation on his political opponent, once we came to learn, of course, that military aid, for a reason that made no sense to anybody, had been withheld, and that a White House meeting had been withheld, and, oh, by the way, an ambassador fired, I'm not surprised that we arrived at this point. And you know, it's worth mentioning, too, all that behavior notwithstanding, the other article is something that I get we're going to have a partisan disagreement over the first article. Republicans seem to think that all that behavior is okay. The second article, though, contempt of Congress, the president asserting that he can just say no to producing documents, to producing emails, forbidding his people to come testify. If anybody subscribes to the idea that that's okay, you're subscribing to the idea that we're getting rid of checks and balances, that the Congress can't demand oversight, essentially, of the president. And at that point, we don't have a president anymore. We have something that looks more like a king or a dictator if Congress doesn't have the right to oversee the executive branch.
Congressman Himes, does Nancy Pelosi have the votes at this point? We are hearing there may be some moderate Democrats, possibly in Trump districts, who may be leaning towards censuring rather than impeachment. What are you hearing about that?
Nancy Pelosi has the votes. I will bet my next paycheck on that. I talked to an awful lot of my colleagues, and I'm pretty sure she has the votes. If Nancy Pelosi is one thing, she is operationally superb at what she does. She never would have allowed this to get this far down the road if she didn't think that she had a good shot at having the votes. There may be votes against it. We're you know, the Democrats, we are never unanimous on anything, so I would anticipate that there will probably be a few who vote against articles of impeachment, but no, Nancy Pelosi has the votes.
Congressman, let me just ask you briefly about this trade deal. The same time you and the other Democrats announced the articles of impeachment, you announced a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. How do you navigate those choppy waters doing the same thing on the same day?
Yeah, I tell you, it was really quite a moment. You know, I actually joined in on the press conference to announce the trade deal with Mexico and Canada, and I was sort of thinking to myself, my gosh, you know, 1 hour ago, Speaker Pelosi was standing right on this spot announcing the articles of impeachment. But look, nobody should be surprised. We've been saying for a very long time that we will do our jobs, that we will not just investigate, but that we will legislate. And of course, getting the USMCA to the point where it is today, where there's enough protection for working families, there's protection for the environment, there are efforts to keep drug prices low. None of that stuff was in the USMCA when it first came to the Democratic House. Lots of negotiators worked very, very hard to get it to that point. So again, nobody should be surprised. We have said all along that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and of course what we mean by that is that we can investigate, as we must do if we are to be true to the Constitution. But while we do that, we will continue to work hard for things that are good for the American people, including, by the way, something that the president originated. You know, the American people need to think about this moment, because they'll remember 8 years of Barack Obama in which the Republican Party worked to stop every single thing that president tried to do. Here, on the very day in which articles of impeachment are announced, Speaker Pelosi says we're going forward with one of the president's policy initiatives. Folks need to think about that and need to think about which party is willing to be bipartisan and which party is not.
Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes live in Washington, D.C. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us back here in Connecticut. All right, we have more to